Did you know your student can lose their college scholarship mid-year? It can happen for a variety of reasons, and today we're going to chat through what the top 5 reasons are that students lose their scholarship throughout the academic year or lose a scholarship that is meant to be for multiple years. Welcome if you are new here, or welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. My name is Shannon, and I have worked in the college atmosphere for over 12 years. The majority of my jobs consisted of working in the dorm, so residence life, and helping students through that experience, working in the scholarship office, awarding scholarships to students, and working behind the scenes with donors to create scholarships for our students. I am here to really share with you all of my knowledge I learned throughout those 12 years to help you best support your student through their academic journey at college. Now let's talk about those top 5 reasons students lose scholarship. Reason number 1, and one of the most common, is switching majors. Now many scholarships your students may receive from their college are major-based scholarships. So your student must be a specific major in order to be eligible for those scholarships. For example, let's say your student is an ag major, so agriculture, and they receive a scholarship that is based on them having a 3.0 GPA, being a sophomore through senior, and being an ag major. But they switch their major mid-year to business. That could make them no longer eligible for the scholarship since it is based on a major criteria. Now, for many times, students, this will come up when census happens. So for every college and university across the US, if they are a semester-based school or quarterly-based system, there will be what's called census. And this is usually for semester schools, about 6 weeks into the semester. For quarter schools, it's about 15 days of instruction in, when the financial aid office goes through and audits every single student to confirm major, to confirm GPA, and to confirm the number of credit hours they are taking, and overall confirm that they're still enrolled here at college. Now, this is when we're doing checks to make sure students are still qualified for the scholarships they received. And many times we find out these different little changes that students have made that may make them no longer eligible for the scholarship. So if your student's at a college that has semesters and they're getting an email or a call 8 weeks into the semester saying, hey, you're no longer eligible for this scholarship, it's either going to, be revoked now, or you will not get it for spring semester. It is because that change was found typically at census, where they are found to no longer be eligible for the actual requirements. So changing your major does have consequences if you have major-based scholarships. If your student is interested in changing their major, I highly recommend they go talk to the financial aid office and talk through the current scholarships they have and see if that will change their eligibility for any of them. Maybe that means delaying changing their major for a semester or two to keep that scholarship if having that financial aid is important to them. They can also talk with the financial aid office about potential scholarships they could be eligible for in their new major. So that is another opportunity for them to get some of that information. All right, reason number 2, which is a huge one, not meeting the GPA requirement. For many scholarships, there's going to be GPA requirements that are ranges. So you must have a 2.0 and above, typically for most scholarships. Some may have something more specific, like you must have a 3.5 GPA and above, or a range of between 2.5 to 3.5. It all depends on the donor and the scholarship guidelines, which are really the rules for the scholarship for eligibility. If your student does not meet the GPA requirement, their scholarship could be revoked. Now, sometimes, depending on how the scholarship is written, there is wiggle room. Now, this is not with all scholarships, but with a few, let's say the GPA requirement is 3.5, but they'll allow your student to go on a scholarship probation if they give above a 3.0, that could be a possibility. So if your student does not meet the GPA for their scholarship, they can potentially lose it. I always recommend 2 things. First, when your student receives any scholarships, they should go talk to the financial aid office and find out the exact requirements of all of those scholarships and keep a copy of those. That way, as they have things change throughout their school year, they can go ahead and know if there might be a potential issue if they're not meeting their GPA requirement. Now, my second thing is if your student believes they're not going to meet the GPA requirement for their scholarship, they really should go ahead and call the financial aid office ahead of time and let them know they have a concern and see if there's anything that can be done proactively for them to be able to potentially keep that scholarship if they don't meet their GPA. There's never a guarantee that your student can keep their scholarship if they're not meeting their GPA requirement for it, but it never hurts to ask and to find out. And being proactive is always one of the most important steps because that gives the financial aid office and sometimes donor relations time to work with the donors or the individuals who created the scholarships to potentially get an exception made whenever possible. It's not always possible, but you have great staff who are always willing to try and see if there is wiggle room. So reason number 3 is not meeting the required number of credit hours or units for the scholarship. For many scholarships, they are going to require full-time enrollment of your student to be eligible for the scholarship. Now, this can vary depending on the year in school your student is or type of school they're in. So if they're an undergrad, so mainly getting a bachelor's degree, typically that is considered full-time is 12 units or 12 credit hours. If they're in graduate school or credential program, that could be 6 or 8 credit hours. It all depends on what area of school they're in and sometimes depending on the institution. But many scholarships are going to require full-time or half-time enrollment for your student. Now, if your student is not meeting that requirement and it's found during census, like we talked about earlier, just when they're checking for GPA and major, it can depend on your student might be losing their scholarship because they're not meeting that requirement. Now, some exceptions can be made for this credit hour requirement, but it's really usually done ahead of time versus retroactively. So for example, if your student knows that they are in their last year of school and they only need a small number of credits to graduate, they can often ask permission ahead of time to say, hey, I know my scholarship needs full-time enrollment, but I'm only going to be taking 8 units next semester, my last semester of school, because that's all I need left to graduate. They can sometimes get an exception from financial aid or the donors of that scholarship to be able to allow them to take less than full-time enrollment since there's no need for them to take extra credit hours. It might not always be possible, but oftentimes it is, so it never hurts to ask. But just like with GPA and major, it's important for your student to know the requirements of their scholarship, so as they're planning ahead for future semesters or quarters, they can make sure they're meeting those requirements. Now, reason number 4, academic dishonesty or disciplinary issues. Now, this is not a common reason students lose their scholarship, but it can happen. Some schools and some scholarships will have clauses that require a student maintain good academic standing and good disciplinary standing at the school, or they're in potential of losing their scholarship. Now, let's be real, most students are never going to have these issues, but sometimes they can. And these are the big things. We're not talking about just getting in trouble for maybe drinking in the dorms. We're talking about the academic dishonesty of cheating, of plagiarizing on things that they have been taught since grade school not to do for exams and for papers. And disciplinary issues, we're talking the big things that involve the police. So we're talking assault, we're talking distribution of drugs, we're talking massive things that hopefully they call home about. We're not talking the little day-to-day things. So if your student does find themselves in one of these situations where they have academic dishonesty or disciplinary issues, I recommend they reach out to the financial aid office ASAP to see if there's anything that can be done to keep them eligible for their scholarships. But this also might be a good conversation for you to have with your student about not doing these things, as they can potentially lose their scholarship, which is their money to attend college. So don't do the naughty things unless you want to lose your scholarship. So reason number 5, not following directions or instructions. Now, depending on your student's school, there actually might be a requirement from the beginning that your student needs to go into their financial aid portal and actually accept their scholarships that they're being offered. And if they don't accept their scholarships by a deadline, they'll then be offered to the next student. So just because your student got awarded the scholarship, if they do not follow the directions to actually accept it, they could potentially lose the scholarship. Now, in addition to accepting their scholarship, some schools and some specific scholarships will have requirements that they need to do, whether that is attending specific events that are required for that scholarship, maybe it is going to specific advising meetings, or completing additional papers or assignments to keep that scholarship up. Some schools do require that your student must complete their thank you letter to the scholarship donor, or must attend certain scholarship thank you events, or they may lose their scholarship. It's important for your student to read all the fine details so they do not lose their scholarship or have that potential. Additionally, another one I've seen is scholarships that are for multi-years. So we're talking scholarships that may cover all 4 years, 5 years of college. But in their clause of their paperwork is that every year a requirement is that they still complete the scholarship application for the college. That way, their information is updated every single year. And if they don't complete that application, they become ineligible for the scholarship. And that is something so silly and so easy to lose a scholarship over, especially because completing a scholarship application each year for the college means they're potentially eligible for many more scholarships. Because every year new scholarships are created, more money comes in for scholarships. So every year your students' chances are different of receiving even more scholarships or potentially being eligible for more scholarships. It's all about those fine details. Overarchingly, if you've heard my theme throughout all of these reasons why students lose scholarships, is that they need to know the requirements of their scholarships. So at any point your student receives scholarships from their college, they should contact financial aid and find out what the requirements are. Save a copy of that on their Google Drive, on their cloud, wherever they're going to keep it and know where it is, and make sure they're meeting those requirements throughout the school year. If at any point they feel like they might not meet one of those requirements, they need to reach out to financial aid to see what can be done about it, if an exception can be made. Sometimes exceptions cannot be made, but it's best to always ask. The worst thing they will hear is no. Alright, y'all, so those were the top 5 reasons students lose their scholarships throughout the school year. Please, I implore you, if your students receive scholarships, to make sure they're organized, know the requirements, and communicate if they feel like they're going to have any issues. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit the like button below and subscribe. I hope you all are having an amazing day and staying healthy, and I hope to see you soon.